Welcome to part 2 of my CompTIA Cybersecurity Analyst Plus, also known as the CySA Plus, practice exam walkthrough. In this video, I go over 20 practice questions formatted similar to the way you'll see on the actual exam. And I also include timestamps in the description to each of the questions. Alright, enough talking, let's go ahead and jump right into it. Alright everybody, thank you for being here. Let's go ahead and jump right into it. I don't want to waste any time. Let's do it. Question 1. Your organization is responsible for the security of a large network with hundreds of devices. You need to identify potential vulnerabilities in your network infrastructure and devices, but you are concerned about disrupting critical systems with active scanning. Which would be the best method in achieving your goal with minimal disruption? A. Conduct a full active vulnerability scan on all devices during peak business hours. B. Run a passive network traffic analysis tool to identify potential vulnerabilities. C. Schedule individual active scans for each device outside of business hours. Or D. Implement vulnerability scanning software with automated patching capabilities. Alright, so this is a pretty straightforward question, I would say here. It's pretty much asking which of the following is a passive scan, right? That's what the scenario in question's asking. And a passive scan is a technique used to gather info about a system or a network without directly interacting with it. And the only option that would allow for this would be B. So I'm going with B. Yep. Passive network traffic analysis tools can identify vulnerabilities by analyzing network traffic characteristics, signatures, and patterns. This approach provides valuable insights without directly interacting with devices, minimizing potential disruption to critical systems. Question 2. Your organization recently deployed a new cloud-based application. Users are reporting slow performance and occasional outages. You suspect the issue might be related to network resource limitations. Which of the following infrastructure concepts would be the best option in diagnosing the root cause of the problem? A. Implementing network segmentation to isolate the application traffic. B. Analyzing system logs for application errors and resource consumption. C. Upgrading the bandwidth of the internet connection to the cloud provider. Or D. Reviewing cloud provider documentation for recommended performance best practices. Alright, so slow performance and occasional outages, and you suspect the issue might be related to network resource limitations. Okay, that's important. So far out of all these options, the one that stands out and to me sounds like the best option so far would be B. But let's take a look here. It wouldn't be A. Network segmentation could potentially help with resource limitations, but it wouldn't help diagnose the root of the problem. It wouldn't be C. That wouldn't diagnose the root of the problem. And technically D could potentially work, but B is just a better overall answer. It gets to the root of the problem, which is what the question's asking here. So I'm going to go with B. By examining system logs, you can identify bottlenecks, excessive resource consumption, or errors that might be contributing to the slow performance and outages. This information is crucial for troubleshooting the issue and implementing appropriate solutions. Question 3. Your organization recently experienced a data breach involving the theft of customer payment card information. You suspect an attacker gained initial access through a web server vulnerability. You've identified suspicious activity logs on the web server, but the logs are incomplete due to a scheduled log rotation that occurred shortly after the breach. What is the best next step to take in your investigation? A. Analyze the remaining web server logs for any indicators of compromise. B. Immediately notify law enforcement and report the data breach. C. Restore the web server from a backup created before the breach. Or D, interview impacted customers to understand the scope of the breach. All right, let's use the process of elimination here. I'm gonna rule out B and D. For B, you don't need to immediately report the breach to authorities, and sometimes you absolutely don't want to do that until you have to. And for D, that could help, but they may not be able to give you enough information to do any good here. So looking through A or C, I'm going to go with A here. And the reason why is just because some data is better than no data. And if you do option C, you could lose all that data. So I'm going to go with option A. While all options are potentially relevant to the overall incident response process, prioritizing the analysis of the remaining web server logs for any remaining indicator of compromises offers the best chance of gleaning valuable information about the attacker's methods in identifying the exploited vulnerability. Question 4. Your organization is a healthcare provider that has recently implemented a new cloud-based electronic health record system. Security is a top priority for protecting sensitive patient data. Which of the following actions would be most effective in mitigating the risks associated with storing patient data in the cloud? A. Train all employees on the basics of cloud security best practices. B. Require MFA for all users access to the EHR system regardless of location. C. Encrypt patient data both at rest and in transit to ensure confidentiality during storage and transmission. Or D. Negotiate a service level agreement with the cloud provider that outlines specific data security guarantees. All right, so the concern is the data itself. So it's asking what's the best way to protect the data given the scenario, right? When it comes to protecting stored data, the best option is going to be C in this scenario. Encrypting the data both at rest and in transit. Now B sounds like a really good answer, and you should still have B as, you know, a solution in this scenario. But keep in mind that MFA is an access control, not a data protection solution. Like, you would never use MFA to protect unencrypted data. If that makes sense, you would encrypt the data. So I'm going to go with C here. Yep. Data encryption is a fundamental control for protecting sensitive information like patient data in the cloud environment. It ensures that even if unauthorized access occurs, the data remains confidential because it's unreadable without the decryption key. Question 5. An organization is implementing a new security information and event management system. The SIM will collect logs from various network devices, security tools, and applications. Which of the following actions would be the least effective approach to improve the overall effectiveness of the SIM for security monitoring purposes? We have A. Correlate logs from different sources to identify potential security incidents that might not be evident from individual logs. B. Develop custom log parsing rules to extract relevant security-related data from various log formats. C. Integrate the SIM with threat intelligence feeds to enrich security events. D. Deploy the SIM in a distributed architecture across multiple geographically dispersed locations. All right, so something to point out here that's important when it comes to answering this question is that it's looking for the least effective approach in regards to security monitoring. So that's what it's asking. And that part is important to answer this question correctly. With that said, let's take a look at each possible answer. Which one does not directly help with security monitoring? And the one that stands out to me is going to be D. D seems like it's more focused on like high availability and redundancy. and it would be the least effective for security monitoring. While still important in this given scenario, it doesn't really directly support security monitoring. So I'm going with D. A distributed SIM architecture can offer benefits like redundancy and improved scalability for very large organizations with geographically dispersed networks. However, it does not make security monitoring more effective by just being geographically dispersed. Question 6. You are a security analyst investigating a suspicious spike in network traffic. After filtering logs, you notice consistent outbound connections to a specific external IP address from several internal hosts. Which of the following network and system concepts would be most helpful in determining the nature of this activity? A. Network segmentation. B. Vulnerability scanning. C. Traffic analysis. Or D. Data encryption. Alright, so it's asking which option would be the best to help identify and figure out the nature of this activity. And the only one that really makes sense would be C, traffic analysis. It's the only way to figure out what's actually happening here is by traffic analysis. So pretty straightforward question, but I'm going to go with C. Traffic analysis allows you to directly examine the characteristics of the network traffic and understand the nature of the communication with the external IP address. Question 7. Your organization recently experienced a security incident involving unauthorized access to a critical database server. The investigation revealed the attacker gained access by exploiting a known vulnerability in the database software that had not been patched due to concerns about potential compatibility issues with custom applications. Which of the following actions is the least effective in preventing a similar incident from happening again? A. Implement a vulnerability scanner to identify and prioritize patching of security weaknesses. B. Conducting a code review of the custom applications to identify any conflicts with the security patch. C. Updating the organization's risk acceptance policy to explicitly acknowledge the risk of unpatched vulnerabilities. Or D. Scheduling regular penetration testing to proactively identify and address security weaknesses. Alright, so the least effective in preventing a similar incident from happening again. So let's quickly take a look at all these again. I would say that option C out of all of these would be the one that would be the least effective. Updating the risk acceptance policy doesn't actively address the vulnerability for the next time it happens. A, B, and D would all be ways to help prevent the incident from happening again. So I'm going to go with C. Focusing on proactive measures like vulnerability scanning, code review, and penetration testing offers a more comprehensive approach to preventing future incidents compared to simply acknowledging the risk without taking concrete steps to address the underlying vulnerability. Question 8. Your organization recently experienced a successful phishing attack. An attacker gained access to a user account with limited privileges and used it to pivot laterally within the network. You suspect the attacker may have exfiltrated sensitive data. You have access to log data from various network devices. Which of the following actions would be most valuable in identifying suspicious activity related to data exfiltration? A. Analyze firewall logs for successful logging attempts from unauthorized IP addresses. B. Search web proxy logs for outbound traffic to known malicious domains. C. Correlate network traffic logs with user login activity to identify lateral movement. D. Analyze system logs on user workstations for file access and transfer attempts. All right, so this is kind of a tough one, I would say. The key here is to investigate and see if the attacker was able to exfiltrate data. I'm gonna right away rule out B and D. For B, now this would only help with known domains. It wouldn't help with unknown domains. And D, you may miss lateral movement techniques if you're just looking at the workstations. So that leaves me with A or C. Yeah, I'm gonna go with C here. Correlating network traffic with user logins, that can help identify lateral movement. So I'm gonna go with C. Let's see if I'm right. All right. Correlating logs from different sources allows for a more comprehensive understanding of the attacker's activity. By analyzing how the attacker moved laterally within the network after gaining initial access, you can identify potential exfiltration attempts more effectively than focusing on individual logs in isolation. Question 9. A recent phishing campaign targeted your organization, and several employees clicked on malicious links to the emails. You suspect some of the compromised devices might be infected with malware. Which of the following resources would be most helpful in identifying potential indicators of compromise associated with the malware? A. Open Web Application Security Project. B. National Vulnerability Database. C. The NIST Cybersecurity Framework. Or D. Payment Card Industry Data Security Standard. All right, so this one can be a tough one. I'm gonna rule out C and D right away. Those are just, for the scenario, those aren't the right frameworks for this particular issue that's happening. Now, it could be B, the NVD, National Vulnerability Database, but it's talking about malware. And I would say that actually A, the OWASP, would make the most sense here. I mean, it would give you a better idea and understanding on what the bad actors are doing. Like, why is the malware even there? And then to exploit, such as phishing and malware infections. I could be wrong. It could be B. But I'm going to go with A. By understanding the common vulnerabilities exploited in phishing attempts, you can identify potential indicators of malware infection in your environment and take appropriate remediation steps. Question 10. Your organization recently experienced a ransomware attack that encrypted critical data. Law enforcement is now involved and has requested a legal hold on all potentially relevant evidence, including user activity logs. You suspect some employees might have clicked on malicious links that contributed to the attack. In the context of legal hold, which of the following actions should you take immediately to comply with the request from law enforcement? A. Delete all user activity logs older than 30 days to free up storage space. B. Explore all user activity logs for the past year and provide them to law enforcement. C. Implement a process to retain all user activity logs indefinitely. Or D. Analyze user activity logs to identify potentially compromised users and report them to law enforcement. All right, so a legal hold question. When dealing with law enforcement, and especially legal hold, due to an ongoing investigation, it's extremely important to not delete any data. So that rules out A right away. I'm also going to rule out C. That's just a bit excessive and could actually bring up privacy issues. if it's held indefinitely, so that's not a good answer for this scenario. So it leaves us with B or D. I'm going to go with B. Exporting relevant logs, ensures compliance with the legal hold and provides law enforcement with potentially valuable evidence. A lot of times, you may think D is the answer, but a lot of times law enforcement, they want all the data. They don't want somebody to go through it and only give them the data that you think may be great for the investigation. They're going to want all the data. That's why I'm going with B here. Yep. The key element here is complying with the legal hold in the context of an ongoing investigation. Deleting data is illegal. Indefinite retention might be unnecessary. And analyzing the data yourself could delay or compromise the investigation. Question 11. Your organization suspects a large-scale zero-day exploit targeting a critical web application is granting attackers unauthorized access to sensitive user data. Your organization has established incident response playbooks, but none specifically address zero-day exploits targeting web applications. In the context of using incident response playbooks during a zero-day attack, which of the following statements is most accurate? A. Existing playbooks should be strictly followed, even if they don't directly address zero-day exploits. B. The lack of a specific playbook renders all existing playbooks irrelevant in this scenario. C. Playbooks can be leveraged as a foundation for developing a tailored response to the zero-day attack. Or D. Playbooks are only useful for responding to well-known and documented security vulnerabilities. All right. So right off the bat, a lot of information in this scenario is completely unnecessary to answer the question correctly. Kind of a rule when it comes to playbooks is that they are a foundation to like a core response activities like, containment, communication, investigation. But they're designed to be adaptable to the attack. It's not supposed to be set in stone. So the best answer for this one would be C. It's going to be to tailor a response to the zero-day attack because it's a foundation. So I'm going to go with C. Their established procedures for core incident response activities can be adapted and expanded upon the address and unique aspects of the zero-day attack, ensuring a more efficient and effective response despite the absence of a predefined playbook for this specific scenario. Question 12. Your organization recently outsourced its cloud storage infrastructure to a third-party provider. The service level agreement with the provider guarantees a 99.9% uptime for the storage service. However, you've recently experienced several service disruptions exceeding the agreed upon downtime threshold. Which of the following actions should you take next after experiencing repeated service disruptions? A. Contact your organization's legal team to discuss damages due to breach of contract. B. File a formal complaint with the provider's regulatory body. C. Review the service level agreement document and identify the specific clauses related to service disruptions and remedies. D. Begin migrating all data to a different cloud storage provider to ensure uninterrupted service. All right, service level agreement. And for those that don't know what that is, it's an agreement between a service provider and a customer that defines the expectations regarding a service that they offer. Pretty much what it is. But the best thing to do when dealing with disruptions exceeding the agreed upon downtime threshold is to review the SLA document and fully understand the accountability and the recourse if the service falls below those expectations. So the best one for this scenario would be C. Within the SLA, it will talk about the accountability that they have to adhere to. All the other options are a bit extreme as a next step, which is what the question's asking, so I'm going to go with C. Understanding the specific terms and remedies outlined in the SLA is crucial first step after experiencing service disruptions. This allows you to hold the provider accountable according to the agreed upon terms and explore potential solutions before taking more drastic measures. Question 13. A security analyst suspects a ransomware attack is underway on the organization's network. Users are reporting issues accessing critical files, and a ransom note has been found on several systems. The analyst has successfully isolated the affected servers to prevent further data exfiltration. Which of the following actions should the security analyst take as the next most effective step in the incident response process? A. Immediately restore encrypted data from backups to minimize downtime and disruption. B. Deploy additional EDR agents on all user devices to strengthen future endpoint security. C. Contact law enforcement and report the suspected ransomware attack. Or D. Analyze captured network traffic in system logs to identify the initial attack vector and scope of the breach. Alright, so let's take a look here. We've already determined it's a ransomware attack and that the affected servers have been isolated. Right, let me double check that. Yep, they have been isolated. So the last step that was completed was containment. You contained the problem. After containment comes eradication. In order to successfully eradicate the issue, you need to understand the entire scope of the attack. Sometimes this is done within detection and analysis, but sometimes it's not. So as far as the best next step, based on the information that we have, which is not a whole lot, I would say they need more information to determine the scope of the breach, and that would be option D. So I'm going with D. Analyzing logs is crucial for understanding the attack and making informed decisions about recovery and future actions. Question 14. A security analyst is investigating a suspected data breach involving a compromised web server. The web server logs indicate a significant increase in unauthorized access attempts originating from a specific IP address range. Which of the following actions should the security analyst take next? A. Immediately block the suspicious IP address range at the firewall to prevent further attacks. B. Contact the owner of the suspicious IP address range to report the unauthorized activity. C. Analyze the web server logs for specific indicators of compromise related to known attack tools or malware. D. Escalate the incident to senior management and involve law enforcement. Okay. So for this one, it's important to know what to do next given the information provided in this scenario. And according to the scenario, we are suspecting, and that's the key word there, suspecting a data breach, meaning we don't know if it's a true positive yet. So the best next thing to do is to get more information to continue the investigation. And that would be by analyzing the web server logs. Now this isn't a great answer, but out of all the options, it's the best answer. So let's go ahead and go through it. You wouldn't immediately block the IP. It could be a legitimate IP. And since it's a range, you don't want to accidentally block IPs that are legitimate. For B, you may not be able to contact the owner at all. And for D, you don't want to inform law enforcement yet. We're not to that step to do that. So I'm going to go with C. Analyzing web server logs for indicators of compromises helps the security analyst understand the attacker's methods, identify the scope of the breach, and make informed decisions about containment, eradication, and future security measures. Question 15. A security analyst is responding to a ransomware attack that has encrypted critical company files. The analyst has successfully isolated the affected systems and restored operations from backups. The business is back to normal. However, some time-sensitive documents were not recently backed up and are now encrypted. Which of the following actions should the security analyst do next? A. Negotiate with the attackers and pay the ransom to recover the time-sensitive documents. B. Attempt to decrypt files using decryption tools. C. Report the incident to law enforcement and seek their assistance in recovering the encrypted data. Or D. Document the incident response process and conduct a post-incident review. Okay, interesting scenario here. Quickly, for A, you don't want to pay the ransom, so I'm ruling that one out. For B, attempting to decrypt the encrypted files could cause more harm than good. And it doesn't specifically say this, but if there was a tool that was downloaded online, whether it's free, it could contain malware. So ruling out B. And then for C, law enforcement may not help, but this largely depends on the circumstance. For this scenario, I would say the best option is D. It specifically says the business is back to normal, and that's key to this scenario. The next step is to document the incident response process and conduct a post-incident review. That way you can work on preparation in the event it happens again. So I'm going to go with D. I could be wrong, but I'm going to go with D here. While recovering data is important, a post-incident review is a crucial step in the overall response process. By understanding how the attack happened and identifying weaknesses, the organization can implement stronger security measures to prevent similar incidents in the future. Question 16. A user reports receiving a suspicious email claiming to be from their bank and requesting immediate verification of personal information by clicking a link. You suspect the mail might be a phishing attempt. Which of the following is the most effective method to determine the legitimacy of the email? A. Hovering over the sender's email address to view the actual source address. B. Checking the email header information for inconsistencies with the sender's domain. C. Clicking the link in a controlled environment like a sandbox virtual machine. D. Searching the bank's website for information about the reported issue. Okay. So a very, very common, you're a security analyst, you'll probably see that if you deal with phishing emails, you will see this scenario every single day, most likely. But the best way, if you're unsure, the best method for trying to figure out if an email is legit or not is to check the email header information. I can't stress that enough. And you check that for inconsistencies with the sender's domain. And if you are serious about information technology, more specifically cybersecurity or information security, this is a very important skill to learn, and you just really want to learn this, trust me. The other options, why are they bad options? The other options can be spoofed, such as looking at the source address. It can be spoofed. So source address doesn't always mean that it's set in stone. You can, there's been times where I use a sandbox environment to look at the emails, but that's not the best way of figuring it out. That's more of a what are they trying to do scenario. And if you don't have your sandbox set up correctly, you can accidentally detonate the payload. So you don't want to do that. I'm going to go with B for this one. Examining the email header information provides the most effective method in this scenario to identify inconsistencies that could indicate a phishing attempt. It offers a safer and more reliable approach compared to clicking the link or relying solely on external sources. Question 17. A security analyst has identified a critical vulnerability in a widely used web application deployed across the organization. The vendor has released a patch, but due to complex dependencies and potential compatibility issues, Deploying the patch immediately might disrupt critical business operations. Which of the following reporting and communication strategies is most important in this scenario? A. Send a technical report detailing the vulnerability to the IT manager for prioritization. B. Escalate the vulnerability to senior management immediately, highlighting the severity and potential business risks. C. Develop a risk mitigation plan with potential consequences and a proposed timeline for patching while minimizing disruption. Or D. Issue a company-wide security awareness email informing employees about the vulnerability. All right, so the key thing here is to think, how do we move forward without compromising business operations? And when it comes to vulnerability management, it's important to view the risk of each vulnerability to your organization's specific environment. The same vulnerability for one company might not be as critical as to another company. It just depends on the environment. And to figure out the impact, you must figure out a risk score, right? So after that, you develop a risk mitigation plan, the timeline for patches while minimizing the actual disruption. So C is the best option to me. I'm going to go C. Developing a risk mitigation plan demonstrates a balanced approach. It considers the technical challenges of patching while acknowledging the security risks posed by the vulnerability. Question 18. A security analyst reviews endpoint detection and response data and identifies a potential new process on a user's computer that exhibits suspicious network activity. Which of the following actions is the best next step? A. Isolate the user's device from the network to prevent lateral movement. B. Remotely delete the suspicious process from the user's device. C. Send an email notification to the user requesting them to explain the suspicious activity. Or D. Analyze the network traffic associated with the suspicious process to determine its potential impact. Okay, so something I want to point out here is that's crucial in answering this question is in this scenario, it says a potential new process, and that this potential new process is exhibiting suspicious network activity. But it's really important to understand that at this time, we don't know if it's a true positive or a false positive. So it's imperative that we do more research is what I'm trying to say. So with that being said, I'm going to go with D. A and B are just jumping the gun, and C is just not a good solution given the incident response, or given the stage of the incident response, I should say. So I'm going to go with D. Analyzing is key to incident response. This information helps the Security Operations Center team to determine the appropriate course of action, such as isolation or process termination, without accidentally disrupting legitimate user activity. Question 19. A security analyst detects a phishing email campaign targeting employees. The email appears legitimate, spoofing the company's CEO and urging recipients to click a link to update their tax information. Which of the following actions should the security analyst do next? A. Block all emails originating from the spoofed CEO address. B. Send a company-wide email warning employees about the phishing campaign. C. Report the phishing attempt to the sender's email provider for abuse. Or D. Extract the malicious URL from the phishing email and analyze it in a sandbox environment. Okay, so we know that it's a legit phishing email campaign targeting employees. So we know that. For this one, I'm leaning towards A. At this point, you've determined that it's a spoofed phishing email, and now you want to try and contain it. So let's take a look. Okay, it could also be D. I mean, finding out the motive is extremely important, and blocking the URL would be a better option than blocking the email. I mean, attackers can easily just spin up another email. but it's a lot more work to spin up landing pages, you know, once you've determined their goal. I'm still leaning more towards A. I mean, to do next, in my thought process, to do next would be to block all emails from the spoof CEO address and then figure out what they're trying to do with option D by extracting the malicious URL from the phishing email and analyzing it in a sandbox environment. That's kind of my thought process. I might be wrong on this one. Not feeling super confident, but I'm going to go with A on this. Block all emails from the spoofed CEO address. But I might be wrong. Let's see. Darn. By understanding the target landing page and its potential malware or exploits, Security Operations Center team can identify the attacker's goals and infrastructure. This information allows for more targeted mitigation strategies like blocking the URL or taking down the attacker's landing page to effectively stop the campaign and protect users. Yeah, that makes sense. Question 20. A company is developing a new custom web application to manage sensitive customer financial data. The development team is following a secure development lifecycle approach. Which of the following security frameworks is most effective to integrate throughout the SDL phases to ensure comprehensive security testing and mitigation of vulnerabilities? We have the NIST 800-53, B, ISO 27001, C, OWASP Top 10, or D, PCI DSS. Alrighty, so for this one, it's important to note that the question is asking which framework is best for developing a web application. And only one of these refer to the actual development of web applications, and that's going to be the OWASP Top 10. The other ones are also just too broad of a security framework for this specific scenario. So I'm going to go with C. Yep. OWASP Top 10 is the most effective for secure web application development and focuses on application style security testing. All right, everybody, thank you for watching this video if you're still here. Leave a comment if you have questions. Appreciate it. Subscribe if you like content like this. I really like doing these types of videos. Keeps me up to date. But yeah, take it easy.